My brother hit me and disowned me for 9 years after his wife called me trash. Yesterday, they appeared at my oceanfront mansion, declaring, "We're moving in." I simply smiled, and closed the gate behind them. What happens when your own brother calls you trash and punches you in the face? 9 years later, he was knocking on the door of my beachside mansion, suitcases in hand, thinking I'd forgotten everything. He had no idea the trap he was walking into. The air that night in Charleston was thick. Not just with the smell of burnt barbecue and cheap beer, but with fake politeness. It was another one of Caleb's infamous backyard gatherings. Everyone was there, the usual cast of cousins, uncles already 3 sheets to the wind on light beer, someone charring ribs beyond recognition on the grill. And me. Standing off to the side, plastic cup in hand, nodding, smiling, pretending. God, I hated those Sundays. Every year, I'd show up, a stupid, hopeful part of me wishing it would be different, that they might, just might, see me as more than just an afterthought. Then there was Venus, my sister-in-law. Her smile, always a little too wide, a little too practiced. She floated through the crowd like she was royalty, the queen bee of their family. And the brutal truth? She was. She absolutely owned them. Then she swooped in. "Cale, sweetie," she purred, her manicured hand landing on my shoulder like I was a charity case. Her voice, pitched just loud enough for everyone to hear. "Still between jobs, huh? Must be nice. All that free time." That last bit hit me hard. Like a slap. I heard those soft, nervous chuckles ripple through the nearby groups. It stung. I looked at my brother Caleb. He just stood there, taking another swig of his beer, staring at the lawn like it held all the answers. Nothing. Not a single word from him. "Actually, I'm freelancing now," I managed, trying to keep my voice even, steady. "It's flexible. Pays well." Venus tilted her head, a smirk playing on her lips. "Flexible is a nice way of saying living off other people's hard work, don't you think?" Something in me snapped. Just a tiny crack, but it was there. I swallowed it. Not yet. Not now. And then Caleb finally chimed in. "She's got a point, Cale. You're always around for the free food and good company, but the rest of the year you ghost us." Ghost us? My blood ran cold. Me? I was the one who called. The one who showed up to help Dad with that busted deck. The one who quietly, anonymously, lent him money when he and Venus were drowning in their mortgage. I swallowed, the words thick in my throat. "I never asked for anything," I started. "Oh, come on," Venus cut me off, her voice dripping with disdain. "That's such a martyr thing to say. Just own it. You drift. You show up empty-handed. You're 37 and still figuring it out. The family's tired." The family. As if I wasn't even a part of it. I scanned the faces around me. No one spoke up. Not Aunt May, for whom I'd once driven 2 hours to pick up from the hospital. Not Uncle Brent, whose damn lawnmower I'd fixed just last summer. They just stared into their drinks, avoiding my gaze. And then I saw Mom. Sitting quietly on the porch, holding something small in her hand. She caught my eye, then looked away. Her expression was utterly blank. Unreadable. Like she didn't want to be part of this, but couldn't step in. My chest seized up. Tight. I turned back to Venus, the words forming on my tongue, ready to unleash something. But Caleb cut me off. He stepped between us, his eyes glassy, his voice suddenly too loud. Slurring. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" he spat. "Always acting like some sad poet. But you're nothing, Cale. You've always been nothing." The air went still. Thick. The silence was deafening. "Is this really what you think of me?" I heard myself ask, my voice cracking, betraying me. Caleb took another step, invading my space. "Trash like you doesn't belong in my life." And then he swung. Hard. Fast. His fist connected with my jaw. My cup flew, plastic scattering. My knees buckled. I hit the ground. A sickening thud. No one moved. For a second, all I could hear was the frantic buzz of cicadas and the violent thumping of my own heart, echoing in my ears like a drum. Blood filled my mouth. I sat up slowly, dazed, my head spinning. And then I saw Mom again. Still on the porch. Still not moving, not speaking. But in her hand that object. Dad's old pocket watch. Cracked. The minute hand frozen between two numbers. She stood. Walked toward me. And without a single word, placed it in my palm. Then she turned her back and walked away. It wasn't love. It felt like an ending. A finality. I didn't cry. I didn't fight back. I just stood up, shaky, bleeding, and walked. Not just out of that backyard. Not just out of that house. I walked out of that family. 9 long years would pass before I saw any of them again. And even then, they only came because I had something they wanted. But that night? I just walked straight to my beat-up car, the metallic taste of blood still in my mouth, the chilling silence of my family behind me. No one, not a single soul, ran after me. That night, I slept in my truck outside a 24-hour CVS, the flickering light buzzing overhead like a persistent, painful memory. I just stared through the windshield, watching the hours crawl by, until morning finally broke. The cold, hollow ache in my chest? It felt like it was settling in to stay. 3 weeks later, I packed 2 duffel bags. That was it. And I left Charleston for good. Houston? It wasn't some grand plan. It was just the first place I found cheap rent and a Craigslist ad for warehouse help. I took it. I slept on a mattress on the floor in a studio so tiny I had to move the trash can just to open the fridge. No one knew me there. And that was the entire point. For the first 2 years, I didn't breathe a single word about my family. Not to coworkers. Not to the neighbor who sometimes asked if I was okay. I just kept my head down, said yes to every extra shift, and tried to bury every thought of birthdays, Thanksgivings, Christmas lights. But you can only bury things so deep before they start to claw their way back up. Then, in my 3rd year, on my 34th birthday, I ended up in the ER. Passed out. Dehydration. Heat stroke from loading trucks under a brutal afternoon sun. When I finally came to, a nurse asked if someone was coming to pick me up. I said no. I told her I'd call someone, but I didn't. I just walked home from that hospital, a prescription in one pocket, a therapy referral in the other. I never filled either one. I wasn't angry then. Not yet. I was just hollow. The anger, that came later. Oh, it came. By year 5, the silence wasn't just painful anymore. It felt personal. Caleb never reached out. Not even after I moved. Not even after I, stupidly, posted once on Facebook about being in the hospital. Just one sad like from someone I didn't even know. That's when I wrote the letter. Not to argue. Not to rehash that awful night. I told him I missed him. I hoped we could talk. Maybe not right away. Maybe not face to face. Just something. I mailed it to his old address in Charleston. No return address, just his name. 3 weeks later, a response. But the handwriting on the envelope? It wasn't Caleb's. It was Venus's. Inside, a typed letter. Cold. Precise. Clinical. It began. Cale, your inability to take accountability for the pain you've caused this family is exhausting. She droned on about my pattern of victimhood, how I drained people emotionally. How Caleb had moved on with his life. One line, I remember it word for word, burned into my brain. You were never cut off. You just couldn't handle the consequences of your own selfishness. I read it twice. Then a third time. At the bottom? No signature from Caleb. Just hers. She'd intercepted it. My brother never even saw my letter. That was the exact moment I realized I could scream into this void forever. No one was coming to pull me out. I stared at that letter for hours, my eyes tracing every cruel word. The way she twisted everything, making me sound like some parasite finally removed. A part of me, the still hopeful part, tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was protecting him. Maybe he really didn't care enough to even ask. But deep down, I knew the truth. That night, I stood on the balcony of my fifth-floor apartment, overlooking a grocery store parking lot, and I tore that letter into tiny, furious pieces. I watched them scatter in the wind, like they'd never even been written. Then I went back inside, opened my beat-up laptop, and started looking for night classes. Accounting. Business. I didn't know what I was going to do. But I knew one thing. I was done being the guy who waited for permission to heal. They wanted silence? Oh, they'd get it. But not the way they thought. Because silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means permission. Permission to build something without them. Permission to grow without their blessing. Permission to take every single ounce of that pain, that fury, and turn it into pure, unadulterated fuel. So, I stopped asking questions. I stopped waiting. I decided that if I was going to be alone, I would, at the very least, be powerful. I didn't announce it to the world. No inspirational quotes on social media, no hustle journal. I just got to work. The very next day after I shredded Venus's letter, I fired up an old laptop someone had practically given me for $20. It wheezed louder than the ancient AC unit in my apartment, but it turned on. That was enough. I started devouring YouTube videos, coding, JavaScript, Python, anything that looked complicated enough to scare everyone else off. I started at the absolute beginning. And I failed. Repeatedly. I couldn't make a button work. Loops made no sense. But the frustration? That felt better than the crushing silence. I'd load trucks at the shipping yard until 3 a.m, grab a few hours of sleep, then wake up and go straight back to that glowing screen. No girlfriend. No weekend plans. 0 distractions. Just that voice, hers, echoing in the back of my head, "You'll never build anything on your own." It followed me everywhere, a constant shadow. Every time I thought about quitting, I heard it. So when I finally got my very first Hello World program to run, I whispered, "Take that, Venus." 2 years deep, I had built something. Something decent. A simple app for scheduling inventory runs, designed for small warehouses just like the one I worked at. I showed it to my boss. He blinked at the screen, scratched his beard, and then, slowly, "Did you build this yourself?" That word. Yourself. I just nodded. A week later, his brother-in-law, some IT guy, sent it to a logistics software firm. They wanted to meet. I showed up in a thrift store blazer, nervous as hell, sweating through my undershirt. The interviewer looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. He scrolled through my demo in silence, then looked at me. "You're rough," he said, "but you're real. We can work with that." That was the first time in my entire adult life anyone, outside of a grocery store cashier had called me valuable. They hired me. Junior level. Barely above minimum base pay. I didn't care. I remember sitting in my beat-up car in their parking lot, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white, whispering, "You did it, man. You did it." 6 months later, they bumped me to full-time. I stopped loading trucks. I bought a real desk. I paid off my last payday loan. But I still didn't call my brother. Because success, I realized, doesn't fill the hole. It just changes its shape. The following spring, my company wanted to send me to a tech conference in Austin. I almost didn't go. I literally didn't own a single button-down shirt without a stain. But my manager insisted. Good exposure. Shake hands. Eat free food. So I went. Walking through that conference hall was like stepping onto another planet. Polished booths. People with slick hair and even slicker titles. Young CEOs practically showering you with business cards. And then, out of nowhere, someone called my name. Kyle. I turned, half expecting it to be a mistake. It wasn't. It was Dante Marshall. We'd gone to high school together. He used to sit behind me in computer lab, always asking me to fix his damn login. I hadn't seen him in almost 15 years. Dante. I blinked. Man, look at you. He just grinned. Look at you. Never thought I'd see you in a place like this. We grabbed coffee, tucked away in a quiet corner. Turns out, Dante had gone into venture capital, co-founded a few startups, and was now scouting talent for a new AI project. We talked for an hour. I told him a little about my app, my company. Not everything, just enough. Then he leaned in. You know, back in high school, I always thought you were too smart to be stuck in that town. I just smiled. Said nothing. He continued, We're building something big. Early stage. We need someone who understands code, yeah, but also understands pain. Real life stuff, not just algorithms. That made me sit up. Look, he said, I've got guys with MBAs lining up for this, but they've never been punched in the face by their own family. Never slept in their car. You have. That means you'll think differently. That hit me. Harder than any job offer ever could. Still, I hesitated. Told him I'd think about it. That night, back in my hotel room, I sat in the dark. I thought about everything. Charleston. Caleb. The punch. Venus and her icy letter. That voice, you'll never build anything on your own. I opened my laptop. Stared at a blank screen. And then I started typing out a plan. I was on a call, pitching our new feature to a group of investors from Singapore, when my assistant quietly slipped her phone onto my desk. Just a name on the screen, Chloe Jacobs' podcast confirmed for 2 p.m. I gave a quick nod, didn't break my stride. But deep down, I felt a click. That subtle shift. The kind you don't recognize until much, much later. The interview was supposed to be light. A casual chat about how some former warehouse grunt built an AI logistics empire from a tiny one-bedroom apartment. But somewhere between the fourth and fifth question, she asked it. Do you ever wish your family had been more involved in your rise? I paused. Thought about deflecting. But my throat tightened, and what came out wasn't planned. Sometimes, I said, my voice low. Family isn't who raised you. It's who respected you. She blinked. Jotted something down. Moved on. The next morning, my inbox exploded. I'd forgotten just how fast the internet moves when it smells something real, something raw. That quote? It got clipped. Shared. Posted on Reels, quoted on TikTok, even turned into merch. Someone messaged me a screenshot of a mug that read, Respect is thicker than blood. Cale Tyrell. It felt surreal. I was living in a high-rise now, waking up to the San Diego coastline, marble countertops, smart lights, all the stuff I once thought only existed on TV. But most nights, I still cooked eggs and toast, standing up at the stove, just like I used to when the power was cut. Money hadn't changed me. But silence? Silence had made me sharper. I didn't party. I didn't flaunt a single thing. My satisfaction came in quiet moments, watching numbers grow, getting positive feedback from clients, seeing my employees believe in what we were building. And then it happened. One late Tuesday night, I'd just finished reviewing product updates, pouring myself a glass of water, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I was about to ignore it, but then I saw the message. Your brother's not doing so well lately. No greeting. No name. No context. Just that. I stared at it, my thumb hovering. 9 years. Not a call, not a card, not even a, How are you? I scrolled up. Nothing. Just that single line. The number was out of state. Not saved. But I knew that clipped, formal phrasing. That cold, calculated warmth. It was my mother. I sat down. My heart wasn't racing. It was sinking. Like a stone dropping into impossibly deep water. I didn't reply. Instead, I put the phone face down on the table, walked out onto the balcony, let the cool breeze slap my face. The city lights twinkled below. Somewhere, far off, people were laughing, dancing, living without this weight. I couldn't tell if her message was genuine concern, desperate guilt, or just bait. And that's what gnawed at me. What did they want? Was Caleb dying? Depressed? Broke? Or had they just seen my name trending, decided now was the perfect time to reel me back in? Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. But mostly I just stood there, letting the silence stretch until it felt louder than anything I'd ever heard. Because when silence finally breaks, it doesn't whisper. It echoes. For years I had trained myself. Forced myself to forget that little boy inside me who used to idolize Caleb, who hung on my mom's every word, who just wanted them to be proud. But in that moment, on the balcony, I realized something I desperately didn't want to admit. I still wanted it. I still wanted to know they saw me. Not just on a screen. Not just when I was useful. But as their son. As their brother. I sat on the edge of the balcony, elbows on my knees, staring at the vast ocean, and I asked myself out loud, in a voice I barely recognized, am I still the kid who just wanted them to love me? And then I hit send. 10 words. No punctuation. No warmth. I slid the phone into the drawer and tried to go about my day like nothing had shifted. But something had. That night I barely slept. Not from regret but from friction. Something unsettled, like a window left cracked open during a brewing storm. I told myself it was done. One reply. That's all. No door opened. No forgiveness extended. Then, 3 days later, a knock. I was in the kitchen, making coffee, early afternoon. Sun slicing sharp lines across the tile. I wasn't expecting anyone. To even get to my door, you needed to clear building security, an elevator code, a doorman. Someone had helped them. I opened the door. And there they were. Caleb and Venus. Standing like they belong. He grinned, like we'd just seen each other last weekend. Little bro, he said, arms open, like it was all a big joke. You gonna leave me hanging? I didn't move. Venus stepped in front of him, bright-eyed, perfectly polished, wearing that same shade of lipstick I remembered from 9 years ago. Kale, she cooed. Wow, you've really made something of yourself. This place is stunning. I stayed quiet. Let the silence stretch between us, thick as barbed wire. They waited for an invitation in. I didn't give one. Caleb, ever the performer, just chuckled and walked past me, as if he owned the place. Venus followed, her heels clicking lightly against the marble. I shut the door behind them, slower than I should have. He did a full lap around the open living room, his eyes scanning everything, the view, the furniture, the art I barely noticed anymore. This view, he said, shaking his head. Man, who would have thought? I didn't answer. I just leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. What are you doing here? Venus took the lead, of course. Oh, we were just in the area, you know. Needed a little change of scenery. Figured it was time we stopped by. It's been far too long. Has it? I asked, my voice flat. Caleb turned. Come on, man. Don't be like that. Families. Family. I almost laughed. Almost. He sat down on my couch like it was his own. Like he'd never laid hands on me. Like he hadn't watched me bleed on the sidewalk and just walked away. I could feel it building in my chest. A slow, simmering pressure. Not rage, not yet. Just an intense tightness. Venus perched on the armrest, all grace and calculated charm. Things have been a little tight on our end lately, she began, drawing out the words. Nothing dramatic, just, you know, the economy. I didn't respond. Just watched her lips move, her earrings sway. She smiled. Anyway, we were thinking, you've got this big space. Way more than one person needs. We just need somewhere to crash for a few weeks. Nothing permanent. Just a soft place to land. A pause. Perfectly timed. 4. Family. That word again. I stared at her, then at him. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on knees. Look, I know we've had history, but we're blood. That's got to count for something. And just like that I saw it. Clear as glass. They hadn't come to apologize. They hadn't come to reconnect. They came because they needed something. That's all I ever was to them. A backup plan. On the hallway shelf behind them, there was a photo I'd never taken down. An old family barbecue. Me, Caleb, Dad before the stroke. Caleb had tossed it once, called it garbage. I found it, cracked, in a box and kept it anyway. I never fixed the frame. Left it broken on purpose. Now, I walked over and picked it up. They watched me. You remember this? I asked. Caleb smiled, a little too brightly. Yeah. Good times. I nodded slowly. You threw it out. Said it was trash. He shifted. Did I? I don't remember that. Of course he didn't. Venus cleared her throat. We're not trying to stir anything up, Kyle. We're just trying to move forward. Together. I placed the photo back. Face down, this time. Then I turned around. I need time to think about it, I said. Venus stood. Of course. Totally understand. Just a few weeks, Kyle. No pressure. Caleb walked toward the door, giving my shoulder a light pat. It's good to see you, man. Really. I didn't flinch. Didn't nod. Didn't say goodbye. I just closed the door behind them, locked it, and stood there, my back pressed against the wood. The apartment felt colder. Quieter. But not empty. They had come all this way, pretending the past never happened. To ask for a piece of the present they never helped build. No apology. No accountability. Just expectation. I looked out the window, down to the street where their Uber waited, already knowing my answer. I told them I'd think about it. But I already knew. The answer was no. That night, I sat on the balcony, a drink in hand, the waves crashing below. They were my real family these days. The cool breeze was a reminder that I'd built all of this, brick by painful brick, alone. I didn't owe anyone anything. I figured that was the end of it. But the next morning, just after 10 a.m., I opened my front door to a mountain of boxes. And right behind them, Caleb and Venus, beaming, like they were early for a party I'd never invited them to. Hope it's okay, Caleb chirped, hauling a duffel bag over his shoulder. We figured it'd be easier to just get settled. You said you were thinking about it, so... Venus held up a medium-sized appliance, wrapped in towels. Where do you want the air fryer? I didn't speak. Not right away. I needed every ounce of silence to hold back the tidal wave of fury rising in me. But they, of course, took my silence as permission. They always did. Caleb brushed past me with a grunt, dropping his duffel just inside the door. Venus followed, setting the air fryer on my kitchen counter like it belonged there. She surveyed the space. This place really does feel like you. Minimal. Sharp. Very clean. I stood at the threshold, my hand still on the doorknob. And for one stupid, naive second, I thought maybe this was all a test. That they'd turn around, laugh, say, "Just kidding," and leave. But no. Instead, Venus opened a box, pulled out a throw pillow, and asked, "Which room has the best morning light?" Caleb gets migraines. By the afternoon, they had spread themselves across 2 guest rooms. Her makeup all over the bathroom's sink. His socks in my laundry hamper. My house was slowly, insidiously, becoming not mine. It was like watching mildew grow. They touched things they had no business touching. Adjusted the thermostat. Rearranged the throw blankets. Left grocery bags on the island without asking. And then, during lunch, Venus eyed my protein shake. Still on your clean fuel kick, huh? You know, some real food wouldn't kill you. Caleb laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. That evening, I ate alone on the balcony. I didn't need their company. I needed air. I needed space to think. Because none of this was a coincidence. They weren't just crashing. They were moving in. The next morning, Venus was in my kitchen, wearing my hoodie, stirring coffee like she owned the pot. Good morning, she chirped far too brightly. I opened the fridge. One of my meticulously prepped meal containers was open. Half-eaten. No note. Caleb walked in, shirtless, scratching his stomach. Man, that bed's firm but good. I could sleep for days. I'd rather you didn't, I muttered. He either didn't hear me, or pretended not to. They settled in like a persistent fog. Impossible to grab, but always there. By day 3, my patience had worn thin, like old paper. I kept my routines meticulously tight. I worked in my study, door firmly closed. Left for the gym without a word. Ate in silence, barely acknowledging the 2 unwelcome ghosts now haunting my space. But then came dinner. We were seated around the kitchen island. I'd ordered Thai. Enough for 3, though I wasn't sure why I bothered. Venus pushed a piece of tofu around her plate, then, as if talking to herself, said, "Some people forget who helped raise them. Who kept the lights on when they were too busy dreaming." I paused, mid-bite, and looked up. Her eyes didn't budge from her food. I took a slow breath. Smiled, thin and tight. "Well," I said quietly, "some people confuse silence for consent. But not everyone forgets." She met my gaze. Her smile twitched. Caleb said nothing. He just kept chewing, pretending not to notice the tension thickening between us like wet cement. That night, I walked the hallway before bed. Stopped outside their room. The door was cracked open, lights still on. I could hear Venus laughing softly at something Caleb had said, like this whole thing was a damn vacation. I moved on, down the hall, past the bookshelf, stopping again at that framed photo. Still cracked. Still mine. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. And that's when it hit me. They weren't family. They were squatters. And if they wouldn't leave on their own, I would show them out. On my terms. The very next day, I pulled up the deed to my house. Just to remind myself, this is mine. Every single inch. Then I printed 2 copies of a guest agreement, sat at the kitchen island, and waited. They strolled in around noon. Caleb yawning. Venus, glued to her phone. "Morning," she said, like we were roommates, like the past 9 years hadn't happened. I slid the documents across the counter. Didn't say a word. Caleb raised an eyebrow, picked one up. "What's this?" he asked, trying to laugh it off, but I heard a flicker of something in his voice. He knew. I kept my tone flat. "Your guests. This outlines what that means." Venus looked up, her smile faltering. Caleb skimmed the first page. "Bro, come on. Seriously? Legal paperwork?" I didn't respond. Just met his eyes. Waited. He flipped to the second page. "You got a lawyer to write this?" I did. Venus walked around the island, picked up the second copy. Her silence stretched, a beat too long. "No alteration to property. No guests without permission. Shared spaces remain under homeowner discretion." She read it aloud, each word tasting sour in her mouth. "Maximum stay 30 days. She set it down with a sharp thud. "Wow," she muttered. "You really think this makes you, what? Better than us?" "No," I said. "It makes me clear." Caleb shook his head, scoffing. "This is cold, man." I looked at him directly. Let the silence hang. "This isn't about cold," I said. "It's about respect." Venus leaned in, arms folded. Her voice, now sharp as a razor. "You know, you walk around here like some self-made king, but you don't even remember who kept you fed when you were 15? Who paid your bus fare when you were broke?" "I remember everything," I said, my voice steady. "Which is why this isn't a favor. It's a line." Caleb tried to diffuse it. "We're family. Families don't do this kind of thing. Families don't move into your house without asking." I shot back. He had no comeback. "But Venus?" She cracked. "You think you're above us now?" she hissed. "You don't even know what he's done for this family." Caleb turned his head fast. "Venus, don't." She was already gone. "No!" she barked. "He wants the truth." Let's give it to him. Then her voice broke, sharp as shattered glass. He lost our house, Cale. All of it. The room went utterly still. Caleb looked like someone had punched the air right out of him. But Venus kept going, her words bitter, unraveling. Blackjack. Sports bets. Loans. I begged him to stop, but it didn't matter. He just kept chasing it, like the next hand was going to fix everything. She pointed a trembling finger at the ceiling. That's why we're here. Not because we missed you. Because we had nowhere else to go. Caleb didn't deny it. He just stood there, staring at nothing. I sat back in my chair. And I felt something shift inside me. Not sympathy. Not anger. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little brother cleaning up someone else's mess. I felt solid. Grounded. Venus wiped her eyes. She wasn't crying, not really. Just cornered. You want us to sign your precious little paper? She snapped. Fine. She snatched a pen from the counter, scrawled her name across the bottom, then shoved it toward Caleb. He hesitated. But he signed. Not because he wanted to. Because he didn't have a choice. As they left the kitchen, I stood up. Walked to the bookshelf. Moved a stack of tech magazines aside. The photo was still there. Still cracked. Still visible. I didn't fix it. I just made space beside it. And I set the signed documents down right next to it. Let them sit together. A broken past. And a boundary, finally drawn. They signed it. But the look in their eyes? That said something else entirely. This isn't over. And I believed them. 3 days passed. Quiet. Tense. They kept their distance, mostly. Polite enough, but every single move felt staged. Venus started wearing even more makeup around the house. Caleb whistled past my office, trying too hard to look relaxed. One night, they cooked a huge dinner. Told me they were trying to make things right. I didn't touch the food. Later that night, thunder rolled in off the coast. The wind howled through the window cracks, shaking the glass just enough to make the whole place feel like it might come apart. Around 2:40 a.m., I woke to my phone buzzing. At first, I thought it was an emergency alert, a weather warning maybe. But it wasn't that. It was worse. Dozens of notifications. Missed calls. Texts. Emails. And then the messages started flooding in, faster than I could open them. What's going on, man? Is this real? That video of you yelling at a woman? It's trending. Cale, you okay? I blinked at the screen. The words didn't make sense. Then I saw the video. It was choppy. Bad lighting. Obviously from security footage. My own security footage. They used my own cameras. In the clip, I was standing in the kitchen, arms raised. Not in anger, but mid-explanation. Talking firmly, yes, but not yelling. In their edit, though, it sounded like I was screaming. They'd cut an audio of a woman crying. Not real crying. Looped. Fake. Just enough to set a tone. The voice sounded like Venus. They even blurred her face, like it was some crime doc on TV. The caption read, "Billionaire tech founder caught on camera in domestic dispute." By 3:15 a.m., the video had hit 2 million views. My body went cold. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, my mind a blank. Not rage. Not panic. Just the slow, dawning realization. This was it. Their play. They couldn't get in through the front door. So now they were trying to burn the whole damn house down. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to consider, was that I'd learned a few things after that break-in at my old office last year. Paranoia can be ugly. But it can also be incredibly smart. I got up, crossed the house in the dark. The storm outside drowned out the sound of my steps. Caleb and Venus were still asleep. I didn't even look into their room. Instead, I went into my study. Opened the drawer. Inside, a small, unmarked black hard drive. I plugged it into my desktop. The footage was all there. Clean. Uncut. Raw. Every room. Every word. The original audio. No screaming. No crying. Just a tired man setting boundaries in his own home. And then I found it. A week prior. The guest room. Venus pacing. Caleb slouched in the corner. Her voice sharp as a knife. If we cut it right, no one would care. It's fake. We just need him to look angry. That's all. Caleb, he'll sue us. Venus, sneering, he's too soft. He won't hit back. I saved that clip. Added timestamps. Labeled every file. Then I called my attorney. By 5 a.m., the originals had been forwarded to legal teams, media contacts, my publicist. By 6:30 a.m., the headlines started to shift. False abuse claim backfires. Billionaire provides security footage. Extortion attempt caught on tape. The comments rolled in. They tried to ruin him. He played it smart. Always document. Always protect yourself. Respect to the quiet ones who don't flinch. By 9 a.m., Caleb and Venus still hadn't come out of their room. I didn't knock. I sat in the living room instead, coffee in hand, watching the surf hammer the shoreline. My phone buzzed again. A text. Unfamiliar number. But I knew who it was. Just one line. We didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't answer. There's a fundamental difference between making a mistake and drawing blood on purpose. And when someone tries to take everything from you, your work, your reputation, your dignity, there's no going back. No breakfast table apologies. I stood up. Walked to the hallway. Past that photo frame again. Still cracked. Still there. Deliberately left. Like a scar that doesn't need covering, only acknowledgement. I left it untouched. And just like that, their silence became louder than any apology could ever be. After the dust finally settled, it wasn't noise that filled the house. It was something far heavier. Quiet. Not the kind that aches. Not the silence of waiting. This was different. This was over. Caleb and Venus didn't say goodbye. No note. No phone call. Just gone. I woke up one morning, made coffee like usual, and noticed their guest room door was open. The bed was stripped. A few drawers half open. The air fryer was still there, a cruel irony. But everything else? Gone. They even left behind a half-used bottle of Venus's perfume on the counter. That sweet, artificial scent lingered a little too long. By noon, the gossip blogs had already moved on. Their social accounts went silent. Caleb's profile? Vanished completely. Venus posted something dramatic 2 days later. A photo of a stormy sky, captioned, "Family is messy, but love remains." I didn't react. Didn't repost. Didn't text. There was nothing left to salvage. I went for a walk that afternoon, down the hill, past the mailboxes, just to feel the breeze. When I got back, the house looked different. Not because anything physical had changed, but because something in me had. I walked the hallway slowly, my fingertips brushing the wall. The house was still too big for one man, but it didn't feel empty anymore. Just peaceful. In the foyer, that same cracked photo frame still hung where it always had. I paused in front of it. The glass still split. A diagonal scar right across my younger self's face. The crack caught the light just enough to shine. I could have fixed it months ago. But I didn't. And I still wouldn't. It stays. That night, I finally opened an envelope that had been sitting on my desk for weeks. I'd avoided it, kept pushing it aside. It was the confirmation. The grant I'd submitted in my mom's name had been approved. $100,000 to a local literacy program for single mothers trying to earn their GEDs. She would have liked that. She always used to say, "Don't just grow money. Grow something that grows people." I sat with that for a while, read the letter twice, folded it neatly, and placed it next to the photo. Later that week, I hosted dinner. Just a small thing. Nothing fancy. 6 people around my dining table, passing roasted vegetables, pouring wine, laughing a little too loud. There was Mark, an intern I'd mentored years ago, who now ran his own successful nonprofit. Mid-meal, he told a story I had completely forgotten. "You remember that time I was going to quit?" he said, setting his fork down. "Right after my dad passed. I walked into your office, convinced I was about to be fired. Instead, you gave me 2 weeks paid leave and told me to go get right with myself." I looked at him. He smiled. "That saved me, man. Seriously." The table went quiet for a second. Then someone, tactfully, changed the subject to politics or some terrible movie remake. But I wasn't really in the room anymore. I was somewhere deeper. Because in that moment it hit me. This was the family I chose. Not tied by blood. But by presence. By loyalty. By showing up. It was enough. After dinner, people lingered, refilled their glasses, argued good-naturedly over old music, swapped chairs. When they finally trickled out around midnight, I walked each one to the door. I cleaned up slowly. No rush. Then I poured myself one last glass of wine, turned off the kitchen lights, and stood at the front window. Outside, the ocean was restless, but not angry. The tide crashed in a soft, steady rhythm, almost like breathing. I stood there for a long time. The house behind me didn't feel like a fortress anymore. It felt like a place I had earned. Brick by brick. Scar by scar. I sipped the wine. And I whispered, not to anyone, just to the air in front of me. They thought they could break me. But they only helped me build walls they'll never cross again. I glanced one last time toward the hallway, where that photo still hung crooked, glass cracked, memory unedited. Then I turned away from it. And walked back into the quiet. Some endings don't need noise. Just the sound of a door finally closing. And staying closed. This journey taught me that blood isn't always thicker than respect. What about you? Have you ever had to choose your peace over a difficult family tie? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments below.